The storm hit like a freight train barreling through the quiet streets of Elmwood Heights, ripping shingles from roofs and turning the night into a howling void. I slammed my shoulder against the front door for the 10th time, the wood splintering under my weight, but it wouldn't budge, jammed solid from the wind's fury, or maybe from the years of neglect I'd let fester in my life. As thunder cracked overhead, shaking the foundations of my crumbling two-story colonial, a sob escaped me, raw and unbidden, because in that moment, with the rain seeping through the cracks like tears I couldn't hold back, I realized I wasn't just fighting a door. I was fighting everything I'd buried deep inside. I'd always prided myself on being the guy who fixed things. Leaky faucets, busted tail lights, the occasional heartbreak that no one else noticed. But tonight, as the power flickered and died, leaving me in the dim glow of my phone screen, I scrolled through my contacts with trembling fingers, landing on the one name that felt like a lifeline in the dark. Jacob Hale, the neighbor I'd barely spoken to in the 6 months since I moved in. "Hey man, it's Ryan next door. Door's stuck. Storm got it good. Any chance you could lend a hand?" The message sent with a whoosh that echoed louder than the gale outside, and I slumped against the wall, wondering if I just invited a stranger into the mess I'd hidden so carefully. His knock came faster than I expected. 3 sharp raps that cut through the chaos like a promise. I yanked the door open just enough to squeeze through the gap, my shirt soaked and clinging. But there he was, tall, broad-shouldered Jacob, flashlight in one hand, toolbox in the other, his dark hair plastered to his forehead, green eyes steady and unreadable in the beam's harsh light. "Looks like she put up a fight," he said, voice low and gravelly over the roar of the wind. But then his gaze flicked past me, into the shadowed living room where a half-empty bottle of whiskey sat on the coffee table beside a crumpled photo I'd meant to burn. And in that split second, before he could mask it, I saw the flicker of recognition in his eyes, the kind that said he'd spotted the hurt I'd thought was invisible, the jagged scar running deeper than the one on my forearm from a night I never talked about. Jacob didn't waste words. He wedged his boot into the doorframe, muscles straining under his rain-slicked jacket, as he assessed the damage with the practiced eye of someone who'd built half the decks in Elmwood Heights. "Warped hinge," he muttered, more to himself than me, shining the flashlight along the edge where the wood had swollen from the downpour. I stood there, arms crossed tight over my chest like armor, trying to play it cool while my heart hammered a frantic rhythm. The storm was a beast outside, bending the oaks in my front yard like they were matchsticks. But inside, the air between us felt thicker, charged with something I couldn't name. "Grab that end," he instructed, nodding toward the door. I complied, our hands brushing as we gripped the frame. His calloused palm rough against my damp skin, sending an unwelcome spark up my arm. We heaved together, grunting against the resistance, and for a moment, it was just us versus the storm, 2 strangers turning chaos into something manageable. The door gave with a groan, swinging open on protesting hinges, and cold rain lashed in like an accusation. Jacob stepped back, wiping his face with his sleeve, and that's when his eyes landed on it again. The photo on the table. A younger me, arms slung around a guy with a cocky grin. My ex, Derek, the one who'd left scars that makeup couldn't cover. "You okay?" Jacob asked, his voice softer now, the toolbox clattering to the floor as he straightened up. It wasn't pity in his tone, thank God. Just a quiet concern that made my throat tighten. I forced a laugh, the kind that sounded hollow even to me, and scooped up the bottle, twisting the cap like it was a lifeline. "Yeah, just the whiskey talking. Storms got me sentimental." But he didn't buy it. His gaze lingered on the faded bruise mark peeking from under my sleeve, the one I'd gotten 6 months ago when Derek's jealousy turned fists into weapons. I'd told everyone it was a fall, slippery stairs in the rain. But Jacob's eyes narrowed, piecing it together without a word. He didn't push, though. Instead, he dragged a chair over from the kitchen, the legs scraping against the hardwood like nails on a chalkboard, and sat down uninvited, gesturing for me to join him. "Sit. We'll wait out the worst of it here. Power's out everywhere. Might as well not fight the dark alone." I hesitated, the vulnerability of it all clawing at me, but the wind howled like it was daring me to say no. So I sat, the photo clutched in my lap like a guilty secret, and poured us both a splash of amber liquid. The first sip burned going down, warming the chill that had settled in my bones. But it was his story that thawed me next. Jacob Hale was Elmwood born and bred, the kind of guy who'd played quarterback in high school and fixed tractors for his old man before enlisting in the Marines right out of graduation. "Saw things over there that make a jammed door seem like child's play," he said, staring into his glass as lightning forked across the sky. His voice carried the weight of sand-swept memories, the ones that made his hands clench even now. Divorced 5 years back. His wife couldn't handle the nightmares, the way he'd wake up swinging at shadows that weren't there. She said I was a ghost in my own home. Maybe she was right. There was no bitterness in it, just a quiet acceptance that made my chest ache. In the dim flicker of a candle I'd lit from the junk drawer, his face looked carved from the same storm-worn granite as the Appalachians that bordered our town. Strong lines, a jaw that could cut glass, but eyes that held storms of their own. We talked like that for hours, the rain a relentless drumbeat on the roof, words spilling out easier than they should have between near strangers. I told him about moving to Elmwood Heights 6 months ago, chasing a fresh start after the city chewed me up and spat me out. Graphic design job gone bust in the recession. Friends who faded when the going got tough, and Derek, God, Derek. The name slipped out before I could catch it, and suddenly I was unloading it all. The charm that turned controlling, the love that twisted into possession. The night he found out about my phase with a guy from work and decided to beat the gay out of me. Called it a wake-up call? I whispered, tracing the scar on my arm. Like I was broken or something. Jacob listened without interrupting, his silence a bomb that let the poison drain. When I finished, the candle had burned low, wax pooling like tears on the saucer. "You're not broken, Ryan," he said finally, his hand covering mine on the table, warm, steady, not pulling away when I froze. "Hurts like that? They don't define you. They just carve out space for something better." His thumb brushed my knuckles, accidental or not, and electricity hummed where our skin met. I pulled back first, heart racing, because in that touch, I saw possibilities I'd sworn off, the kind that could shatter me all over again. By dawn, the storm had passed, leaving Elmwood Heights sodden and stunned, branches littering the streets like fallen soldiers. Jacob helped me reinforce the door with a spare board from his truck, our laughter echoing as we cursed the warped wood. "Oh, you won," I said, clapping his shoulder a beat too long. He grinned, that rare flash of teeth that lit his face like sunrise. "Neighbors help neighbors. That's the rule around here." But as he drove off in his beat-up Ford, taillights fading into the mist, I touched the spot where his hand had been, wondering if I just cracked open a door I wasn't ready to walk through. The days that followed blurred into a tentative rhythm. Mornings, I'd spot Jacob through my kitchen window, nursing coffee on his porch swing, the steam curling like secrets in the crisp fall air. Elmwood Heights was the epitome of small-town America. Red brick Victorians lining maple-shaded streets. The kind of place where Friday night football drew the whole town and the diner on Main served pie that tasted like home. I'd moved here for the quiet, the anonymity after Chicago's relentless grind. But now it felt alive, buzzing with unspoken invitations. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in bruised purples, I found myself knocking on his door with a six-pack as peace offering. "Figured you could use a beer after wrestling that oak branch off Mrs. Hargrove's roof today," I said, holding it up like a white flag. He chuckled, stepping aside to let me in, and his place hit me like a time capsule. Worn leather couch, walls lined with dog-eared paperbacks and faded photos of a younger him in desert camo, grinning with buddies whose faces I'd never know. No frills, just real. The opposite of my sterile apartment, still half-unpacked boxes mocking my stalled life. We cracked open cans on his back deck, watching fireflies wink in the gathering dusk. Conversation flowed easy, skirting the edges of what we'd shared that night. He asked about my designs, sketches of urban landscapes twisted with emotional undercurrents, the kind that paid the bills when freelance gigs came through. "You've got a way of seeing the cracks in things," he said, leaning back with his boots propped on the railing. "Makes them beautiful somehow." I shrugged it off, but his words lodged deep, stirring something dormant. A spark of the artist I'd buried under survival mode. As cicadas hummed their symphony, the talk turned personal again. Jacob opened up about his ex, Sarah, the high school sweetheart who'd stuck by him through deployments but crumbled under the PTSD's weight. She wanted the hero from the stories. Got the wreckage instead. His voice cracked just once, and I reached out, squeezing his knee without thinking. A gesture born of empathy, lingering into comfort. He didn't flinch. Instead, his hand came down over mine, holding it there as stars pricked the sky. What about you, Ryan? After Derek, you seeing anyone? The question hung heavy, laced with subtext that made my pulse stutter. I shook my head, staring at our joined hands. Nah, swore off it. Too much risk for too little reward. But even as I said it, doubt crept in. Jacob's touch was steady, not possessive like Derek's had been. Claws digging in to claim. It was an anchor, pulling me toward shore. We sat like that until the beers warmed, the night wrapping around us like a shared secret, and when he walked me to the door later, his goodbye hug pressed a little closer, his breath warm against my ear. Night, neighbor. Sleep evaded me that night, tangled in sheets that smelled faintly of rain and possibility. By week 2, our porches became neutral ground, morning coffees turning into evening walks down to the reservoir, where the water mirrored the changing leaves like fractured memories. Jacob had a way of drawing me out, his questions gentle probes that unearthed stories I'd locked away. The kid in rural Ohio who'd sketched his way through a closeted childhood. The college fling that ended in heartbreak when his boyfriend's family found out. Felt like I was always apologizing for who I was. I admitted one twilight, skipping stones across the glassy surface. Jacob nodded, his shoulder brushing mine. No apologies needed here. Not with me. It was on the third walk that the first real crack appeared. Not in us, but in the fragile peace I'd built. My phone buzzed in my pocket, Derek's name flashing like a ghost. Miss you, Ree. Can we talk? I was wrong. I deleted it without replying, but the tremor in my hands betrayed me. Jacob noticed, of course, his silence louder than words as we turned back toward home. That night, alone in the dark, I wondered if I'd invited the storm back in, door fixed or not. Fall deepened in Elmwood Heights, the air crisp with the scent of bonfires and turning leaves, but inside me, a warmer current stirred, pulling me toward Jacob like gravity I couldn't fight. We'd fallen into a routine that felt dangerously like dating without the label. Shared dinners where he'd grill burgers on his rusty Weber while I tossed salads with more flair than necessary, our laughter mingling with the sizzle of meat and the low hum of classic rock from his old radio. You're spoiling me, he'd tease, bumping my hip with his as we plated food, and I'd fire back with a grin. Someone's got to keep you from living on takeout and regret. One Saturday, with the town buzzing for the annual harvest fair, he dragged me along, his arms slung casual over my shoulders as we navigated the crowded midway. Elmwood's fair was pure Americana. Hay bales stacked high, kids shrieking on the Ferris wheel, the air thick with fried dough and caramel apples. Jacob won me a stuffed bear at the ring toss. Oversized, ridiculous, with a lopsided grin that matched his own, and I clutched it like a talisman, ignoring the sidelong glances from locals who knew his story but not mine. What's it like? I asked later, as we shared cotton candy under the strung lights, pink sugar dissolving on our tongues. Being the town hero who came back changed? He shrugged, licking residue from his thumb, his eyes distant for a beat. Folks here mean well, but they see what they want. A parade float version of me. Truth is, war took pieces I ain't getting back. But days like this, they stitch some in. His gaze met mine, steady and searching, and I felt exposed, like he could see the frayed edges Derek had left. We wandered to the edge of the fairgrounds, away from the noise, where a bonfire crackled in a pit ringed by logs. Couples, straight, queer, everything in between, huddled close, sharing blankets against the chill. Jacob spread his jacket on the ground for us, and we sat shoulder to shoulder, the flames dancing reflections in his eyes. That's when he kissed me. It wasn't fireworks or thunder, just a slow lean in, his hand cupping my jaw with a tenderness that stole my breath, lips brushing mine soft as a question. I answered by pulling him closer, the world narrowing to the taste of smoke and sweetness, the solid warmth of him grounding me. When we broke apart, foreheads touching, he whispered, "Been wanting to do that since the storm." My heart swelled, a mix of terror and elation, because this us felt real in a way nothing had before. No games, no fists, just two men finding footing in the firelight. But reality has a way of snuffing sparks. Monday brought a call from my old boss in Chicago, dangling a freelance gig that could pull me back to the city lights and steady pay. "It's a foot in the door, Ryan. Don't blow it." He barked over the line, oblivious to the life I'd started building here. I hung up staring at my sketchpad, lines blurring as doubt crept in. Jacob sensed it that evening, when he stopped by with pizza after a long day at the hardware store. "You look like you swallowed a lemon," he said, flipping open the box on my coffee table. The same one that had held that damned photo weeks ago. I spilled it all over greasy slices. The job, the temptation of escape, the fear that staying meant risking more hurt. "Derek's texts keep coming," I admitted, voice low. "Says he's changed in therapy." Part of me wonders if I should hear him out, just to close the door. Jacob's fork paused mid-air, pepperoni glistening under the lamp. "And the other part?" I met his eyes, raw. "The other part's terrified of believing anyone again. Even you." The words landed like stones in still water, ripples spreading. He set the slice down, reaching across to lace our fingers. "I get fear, Ryan. Lived it overseas, live it still some nights. But running, that just delays the fight. Stay. Fight with me." His plea hung in the air, heavy with unspoken promises, and I nodded, sealing it with a kiss that tasted of olives and hope. But as he left, the phone buzzed again. Derek this time, a voicemail. Please. I need to explain. Meet me halfway." I deleted it, but the seed of conflict took root, whispering of betrayals past and the ones yet to come. Weeks blurred into a tentative bliss. Jacob introduced me to his world. Poker nights with the VFW crowd, where grizzled vets swapped war stories and eyed me with cautious approval. Sunday drives in his truck up to the ridges, where we'd hike trails carpeted in crimson leaves, his hand finding mine on the ascents. "This is what normal looks like," he'd say, pulling me against a tree trunk for a kiss that left me dizzy, the forest echoing our breaths. I started sketching him, candid lines capturing the curve of his smile, the scar above his eyebrow from a shrapnel nick, and he hung one on his fridge, titled simply Home. But Derek's shadow lengthened. Letters arrived now, postmarked Chicago, filled with apologies scrawled in his familiar slant. Tales of therapy breakthroughs, regrets over the monster he'd become. "I see it now, how I pushed you away because I couldn't face myself." One read. "I burned them in the sink, flames licking the edges, but ashes lingered like guilt." Jacob noticed the tension coiling in me, the way I'd pull away mid-embrace, eyes distant. "Talk to me," he'd urge, his arms a safe harbor I both craved and feared. The breaking point came on a gray November afternoon, rain pattering against the windows like impatient fingers. I'd been dodging Derek's calls, but he showed up unannounced. Leaning against his sleek Audi in my driveway, looking every bit the city boy who'd once swept me off my feet. Tall, blonde, with that disarming smile sharpened by desperation. "Ryan," he called as I stepped out, umbrella forgotten. 5 minutes. That's all I ask." Jacob was at work, oblivious, but his absence felt like a chasm. I waved him inside, the door, our fixed door, creaking like a warning. In the living room, Derek paced, words tumbling out. The counseling, the self-realization, even a halting admission of his own buried attractions. "I was scared, okay? Of you, of us. But I love you still. Come back. We can fix this." His eyes pleaded, mirroring the man I'd fallen for years ago. And for a treacherous moment, nostalgia tugged. Memories of lazy Sundays, whispered dreams before the darkness descended. "I can't," I said finally, voice steady despite the quake inside. "You broke me, Derek. And Jacob, he's putting me back together. The name slipped out like a confession, and Derek's face twisted, hurt morphing to something uglier. A flash of the possessiveness I'd fled. Jacob? The redneck neighbor? Come on, he's a rebound. A pity fuck for your little identity crisis. The venom hit like a slap, echoing the night he'd marked my skin, and I shoved him toward the door, heart pounding. Get out. We're done. He left with a slammed car door, tires screeching into the dusk, but the damage festered. That evening, when Jacob came over with takeout Thai, his go-to comfort food, I couldn't meet his eyes, the lie of omission burning my tongue. Rough day? He asked, unpacking containers with easy grace. I nodded, forcing smiles through bites of pad CEW. But guilt gnawed deeper than hunger. How could I build this with him while Derek's ghost whispered doubts? As he cleared plates, his hand grazed my back, and I flinched. Unintended, but it landed like rejection. Hey! He said softly, turning me to face him. Whatever it is, we face it. Together. Tears pricked then, hot and unbidden, and I broke. Spilling Derek's visit, the temptation, the cruel words. Jacob listened, jaw tight, but no anger flared. Instead, he pulled me into his chest, chin resting on my head. You chose us. That's what matters. We made love that night. Not frantic, but slow, reverent, bodies mapping forgiveness in the dark. Afterward, tangled in sheets, his heartbeat steady under my palm, I whispered, I love you. The words hung, vulnerable, and he kissed my temple. Love you too, Ryan. Scars and all. But love, I've learned, is a fragile bridge over raging waters, and Derek wasn't done crossing. Thanksgiving crept up on Elmwood Heights like a warm blanket over the chill. Turkeys roasting in every kitchen, the air rich with sage and cinnamon. Jacob and I hosted a small gathering, him, me, his sister Ellie from across town, and a couple of his vet buddies who'd become mine too. The dining room table groaned under platters. My contribution a pumpkin pie with lattice crust flaky as autumn leaves. Jacob's brined bird golden and juicy. Laughter filled the space, easy and abundant. Toasts raised to second chances and the simple grace of full bellies. Ellie, a sharp-witted nurse with Jacob's green eyes, pulled me aside mid-meal, clinking her wine glass against mine. He hasn't smiled like this in years, you know. You're good for him, Ryan. Her words settled warm in my chest, chasing shadows I'd thought permanent. Later, as we cleared dishes, Jacob trapped me against the sink, suds bubbling between us, and stole a kiss that tasted of gravy and gratitude. Best holiday yet, he murmured, and I believed him, believed us. But as the guests trickled out into the frosted night, my phone lit up on the counter. A text from an unknown number. Saw you at the fair. Cute bear. But he's not right for you. Derek. How he'd gotten wind, I didn't know. Maybe stalked my socials or worse, driven by again. Paranoia prickled, but I silenced it, shoving the phone in my pocket. Jacob caught the shift, though his brow furrowing as he loaded the dishwasher. Everything good? I nodded too quickly, pulling him into a hug to distract. Just buzzed on Ellie's stories. Come to bed. It worked, for then, his arms wrapping tight, carrying me upstairs where we lost ourselves in each other. The world reduced to whispers and warmth. December arrived with snow dusting the rooftops like powdered sugar, transforming Elmwood into a postcard of white-capped charm. Jacob and I strung lights on his porch, tangling in the glow until we were laughing, breathless, cheeks flushed from cold and closeness. He talked dreams that night over cocoa by the fire, maybe opening a small contracting business, specializing in stormproof builds. Something solid, he said, fingers tracing mine. Like us. I sketched him there, firelight carving shadows on his profile, and for the first time in years, hope felt tangible, a line I could draw without fear of erasure. But Derek's texts escalated, a drip turning to downpour, photos of us from years back, captions pleading reconciliation. Voicemails thick with sobs, promising the world if I'd just listen. I blocked the numbers, but he switched tactics, emails from work accounts, even a package delivered to my door. A leather-bound sketchbook, the one I'd left behind, inscribed inside, "For the artist I broke. Forgive me." Rage simmered, mixed with pity, and I confided in Ellie over coffee at the diner, her booth a confessional. "Sounds like classic abuser playbook," she said bluntly, stirring her latte. "Hoover you back in when you're healing. Block him everywhere, Ryan. And tell Jacob, he's stronger with you than without." She was right, but vulnerability terrified me. Jacob had his own demons. The last thing I wanted was to drag mine into our light. Still, guilt festered, poisoning quiet moments. One evening, after a shift at the store where he'd sold out of snow shovels, he came home to find me staring at the sketchbook, pages open to a drawing of Derek and me, happier times mocking the now. "What's this?" Jacob asked, voice even, but tension coiled in his shoulders. I confessed it all, the visits, the pleas, the pull of old wounds. He sank onto the couch beside me, rubbing his temples. "Why didn't you say sooner?" Hurt laced his words, not accusation, but it stung. "I didn't want to burden you," I whispered. "You've carried enough." He pulled me close, but the embrace felt strained, a crack in the foundation. "We're a team, Ryan. Burdens shared don't break. They build." We talked late into the night, forging a plan. I'd change my number, report the harassment if it continued. He held me as sleep claimed us, but dawn brought a new shadow. His restlessness, the way he'd stare out windows like scanning for snipers. Christmas Eve dawned brittle cold. The town aglow with wreaths and carols piping from speakers on Main. We volunteered at the shelter, dishing out meals to folks down on luck, Jacob's easy banter drawing smiles from the hardened. "See that?" he said later, as we drove home through flurries, a tree lot's lights twinkling in the rear view. "That's the real spirit, giving what you can." At home, we trimmed a scraggly pine he'd chopped from his backyard, ornaments clinking like toasts. A marine insignia from his service, a paint-splattered bauble from my art school days. Under the branches, he gifted me a leather tool belt, "For the fixer in you," and I gave him a framed sketch of us by the reservoir, hands linked, titled "Steady." The kiss that followed sealed the night, tender and deep, but as midnight told, my phone, new number be damned, vibrated with a call from dispatch. A welfare check at my old address? No, a message from the non-emergency line. Derek had shown up at my Chicago workplace, ranting about a stolen life, security escorting him out. Panic surged, and I showed Jacob, his face darkening like storm clouds. "This ends now," he growled, grabbing his keys. "We're confronting him. Together." Against my protests, we drove through the night, the highway a black ribbon under sodium lights, snow whipping the windshield. Chicago loomed, all steel and neon, a world away from Elmwood's embrace. We found Derek at a dive bar near my old apartment, slumped over a whiskey, eyes bloodshot when we slid into the booth. He slurred, then stiffened at Jacob's presence. "Who's this?" "Bodyguard." "Friend," Jacob said flatly, his hand under the table on my thigh, an anchor. "One who knows when to walk away." Derek's gaze sharpened, venom rising. "He told you, huh? About how he led me on, played both sides. Lies twisted out, painting me the villain, and doubt flickered, old insecurities clawing back." But Jacob's voice cut through, steady as bedrock. "I know Ryan, and I know a man grasping at ghosts when I see one. Let him go, Derek. For both your sakes." The bar's jukebox wailed a blues tune, raw and mournful. As Derek deflated, tears carving tracks down his stubbled cheeks. "I loved him," he choked. "Still do." Jacob's grip tightened. "Love doesn't bruise. It heals." We left him there, broken but breathing, and as we merged onto the interstate, dawn breaking pink over the skyline, relief washed over me. Cleansing, complete. "Thank you," I whispered, head on Jacob's shoulder. He kissed my hair. "Team, remember? Back in Elmwood by noon." We crashed into bed, the world hushed under fresh snow. But peace, I found, is fleeting, a breath before the plunge. New Year's found us on Jacob's roof, bundled in coats and scarves, watching fireworks bloom over Elmwood Heights like defiant stars. The town below pulsed with cheers, resolutions whispered into the night. But up there, wrapped in his arms, I felt resolved already. Committed to this man who'd seen my fractures and stayed to mend them. To us, he toasted with a thermos of spiked cider, lips brushing mine cold and sweet. The kiss deepened, world fading to the crackle of bursts and his heartbeat against my chest. A vow unspoken but sealed. January thawed the snow into slushy streets, but our rhythm held steady. Mornings tangled in sheets, his coffee strong and black, mine laced with cinnamon. Evenings where I'd sketch by the fire while he tinkered with a model boat from his Navy days. Stories of Pacific swells shared between sips of wine. He opened up more about the war. Not the glory, but the grit. Buddies lost to IEDs. The endless sand that choked dreams. Came home missing parts of my soul. He'd say, voice rough, but then he'd smile, tracing my collarbone. You make me feel whole again. I bloomed under it, freelance gigs flowing, designs for local businesses, even a mural commission for the community center. Vibrant swirls of Elmwood's history laced with personal motifs. Cracked doors mending, storms giving way to sun. Jacob showed up on the last day, paint splattered and grinning, a picnic basket in hand. Can't let you starve, artist. We ate under the scaffold's shadow, falafel wraps and hummus from the Middle Eastern spot downtown. His head in my lap as I fed him grapes. Proud of you, he murmured, and the words unlocked something. A fierce love that scared me with its depth, but beneath the idle, fissures formed. Jacob's nightmares returned, sharper now, jolting him awake with shouts that echoed my own buried screams. One night, after a particularly brutal episode, him thrashing, murmuring apologies to ghosts. I held him through the sobs, his body slick with sweat. It's you or nothing, he gasped, clinging like I'd vanish. Guilt twisted in me. Was I enough to heal war's wounds? Derek's silence helped. A void that should have been peace, but instead bred worry. Had we pushed him too far? February brought Valentine's. Elmwood streets heart-decked and cheesy. Jacob planned a surprise. A cabin rental up in the Poconos. 2 nights of snowshoeing and stargazing. The drive wound through pine-thick hills. Radio crooning ballads as his hand rested on my knee. The cabin was rustic charm. Stone fireplace. Loft bed with quilts thick as clouds. We arrived to a blaze already crackling, champagne chilling. To hidden hurts, he toasted, clinking flutes. And the ones we find together. Dinner was fondue, dips and laughs turning intimate. His eyes holding mine across the table like a promise. That night, under rafters dusted with snow, we explored each other with deliberate care. Kisses trailing like constellations, bodies aligning in quiet reverence. No rush, just presence. His fingers mapping my scars with lips, mine soothing the tension in his back. You're my safe harbor, I whispered in the afterglow, and he pulled me closer, breath mingling. And you're the wind in my sails. Dawn found us snowshoeing trails, powder crunching underfoot, stopping at a frozen pond to skim stones that skipped like skipped heartbeats. Back home, the glow lingered, until Ellie's call shattered it. Derek's in the hospital, she said, voice clipped over the line. Overdose. Left a note naming you, Ryan. Cops might want a statement. The world tilted, Jacob's face paling as I relayed it. We drove to Chicago in tense silence, his knuckles white on the wheel. The hospital was sterile hell. Beeps and bleach, Derek pale in a bed, tubes snaking like accusations. Awake but groggy, he turned hollow eyes on me. Didn't mean to scare you, just couldn't stop the noise in my head. Jacob hung back, arms crossed, a sentinel. Derek's gaze flicked to him, resentment flickering. You won, huh? Took my place. Bitterness laced the words, and Jacob stepped forward, voice low thunder. No one's place to take. You need help, man, real help. Not Ryan. Derek's laugh was weak, broken. Easy for you to say, soldier boy. Bet you've got your own skeletons. The jab hit, Jacob's jaw clenching, but he held steady. Yeah, and I face him. You should too. We left after the statement, Suicide note vague, no charges, just a weary detective's card. The drive back was heavier, Jacob's silence brooding. He almost dragged you down with him, he said finally, eyes on the road. You can't save everyone, Ryan. I nodded, but the weight settled. Guilt for leaving Derek behind. Fear that my past poisoned our present. That night, sleep evaded us both. Bodies close but minds adrift. Spring teased Elmwood with crocuses pushing through mud, but our paradise cracked wider. Jacob withdrew. Longer hours at work, evasive about nightmares that now included Derek's face in the shadows. It's nothing, he'd brush off, but I saw the strain. The way he'd gripped the steering wheel like a lifeline. I threw myself into the mural's final touches, paints vivid as emotions I couldn't voice. Ellie cornered me at the diner. He's spiraling. Talk to him, before it breaks you both. The confrontation came on a rainy April evening, thunder rumbling like old friends. Jacob stumbled in late, smelling of bourbon. Not much, but enough to alarm. Rough day, he muttered, shrugging off his jacket. I set down my brush, heart pounding. It's more than that. Talk to me, Jacob, like we promised. He paced, words tumbling. The overdose triggering flashbacks, guilt over failing, like he'd failed his squad. Jealousy that Derek's chaos still pulled at me. What if I'm just another bandage? What if I hurt you like he did? The accusation stung, raw. You think I'd stay if you were? I shot back, tears hot. I've seen your dark, Jacob, held you through it. But hiding? That's the betrayal. He froze, face crumpling, and collapsed onto the couch, head in hands. I'm scared, Ryan, of losing you, of being the ghost again. I knelt before him, tilting his chin up, thumbs brushing tears. Then fight with me, not against. We cried then, ugly and honest, forging through the storm with words as our weapons. Dawn brought fragile peace. Coffee shared in sunlight, promises renewed. But as petals bloomed outside, I wondered if we truly weathered it, or if the roots of doubt ran deeper. May unfurled in Elmwood Heights with dogwood blossoms carpeting the streets, a riot of white against green. But our reconciliation felt tentative, like walking a tightrope strung with hope. Jacob threw himself into plans for his contracting business. Blueprints spread across the kitchen table, late nights calculating bids under the hum of a desk lamp. This could be it, he'd say, eyes alight, pulling me into hugs that smelled of sawdust and possibility. I supported him fiercely, designing a logo. Clean lines evoking strength and renewal, a hammer crossed with an olive branch. Hail builds. It read solid like him. My own world expanded too. A gallery in Pittsburgh reached out, interested in a series of my sketches, the ones born from our story. Fractured figures mending under stormy skies. It's personal, I told the curator over coffee in the city, nerves jangling. She nodded, sharp-eyed. That's what makes it sing. Vulnerability sells, but yours? It heals. Driving back, windows down to let spring air scour my doubts. I called Jacob, voice bubbling. They want a show. In July. His whoop echoed through the speaker, pulling over on the shoulder for a virtual victory dance that dissolved into laughter and, I love you, S. But harmony has undertows. Derek, discharged to rehab upstate, sent a letter. His first since the hospital, handwriting steadier. I'm working on me, for real this time. No contact, I promise, just know I'm sorry. Be happy, Ree. It should have closed the chapter, but reading it alone in the garden, petals drifting like confetti, stirred a melancholy ache. Forgiveness? Maybe. But trust? That was Jacob's domain now, and sharing the letter over dinner felt like tempting fate. He read it silently, fork paused over lasagna, then folded it neat. Good for him, he said, but tension wired his frame. You believe it? I searched his face. Does it matter? We're here. He nodded, but later, in bed, his touch was urgent, almost desperate. Kisses bruising in their need, as if anchoring me against tides. You're mine, he whispered. Not possessive like Derek, but fervent, and I melted into it, whispering back assurances until sleep claimed us. June sweltered, humidity thick as unspoken fears. Jacob's first contract landed. A porch rebuild for the mayor's widow, boards groaning under his hammer like old bones. I visited the site one afternoon, lemonade in hand, watching him work shirtless in the heat, sweat tracing the ridges of his back. "I candy delivery," I teased, and he grinned, wiping his brow before pulling me into a kiss that tasted of salt and sawdust. The widow, spry at 78, clucked from her rocker. "You boys are good for this town's soul." Her words lingered, a benediction, but as I drove away, Jacob's phone buzzed on the seat. Ellie's name. "Check on him," she said when I answered. "Nightmares again. Bad ones." That evening, he came home hollow-eyed, collapsing into a chair with a beer. "Dreamt I lost you," he admitted over takeout stir-fry, voice frayed. "Derek's shadow pulling you under. Woke up swinging." My heart clenched. The overdose had unearthed landmines. "Therapy," I urged gently. "Like you pushed me to face Derek." Pride bristled. He, the fixer, needing fixing? But after a long silence, he nodded. "For us, yeah." Sessions started mid-month, him vanishing to the VA clinic twice weekly, returning quieter but lighter, like burdens unloaded. He shared snippets, the shrink calling it transference, his war guilt latching onto our story. "Makes sense, I guess," he'd say. Us walking the reservoir at dusk, fireflies winking approval. One night, post-session, he stopped mid-trail, dropping to one knee, not proposal but vulnerability raw. "I was gonna ask you to move in," he said, pulling a key from his pocket, simple iron on a chain. "But only if you're all in. No ghosts." Tears blurred the engraving, our initials intertwined. "All in?" I choked, hauling him up for a kiss that sealed it, the path echoing our joy. Packing my apartment felt like shedding skin. Boxes labeled ours. The fixed door clicking shut on solitude. Neighbors waved from lawns. Elmwood's grapevine buzzing with quiet support. Jacob's place became home. His books mingling with mine. My easel by the window catching morning light. July's heat peaked with my gallery opening. A sweltering Pittsburgh night where air conditioning hummed like applause. Jacob stood sentinel in a button-down that hugged his frame, hand warm on my low back as guests milled, sipping Chardonnay and murmuring over canvases. "These are us," one patron said, tracing a piece of two figures in rain, doors ajar. Sales ticked up, 3 pieces gone by night's end, and Jacob's pride shone brighter than spotlights. "Told you," he whispered in the hotel bar later, toasting with bourbon. "You're a force." Ecstasy crested, but climax loomed. Back in Elmwood, a call from rehab. Derek released, stable, requesting a final meet. Closure, his counselor called it. Against Jacob's protests. Why risk it? I agreed, needing to end the echo. We drove together, his presence my shield, to a neutral cafe overlooking Lake Michigan. Waves lapping like uneasy breaths. Derek arrived changed, thinner, eyes clear, no trace of the storm. "I won't keep you," he said over coffee, voice steady. "Just, thank you for surviving me." Words bridged the chasm. My pain voiced, his remorse owned. No romance rekindled, just humans hashing humanity. Forgiveness tentative but real. Jacob watched silent, thumb stroking my palm under the table. As Derek left, handshake firm, a weight lifted. Not gone, but lighter. "Proud of you," Jacob said on the drive home. Sunset gilding the dashboard. But his eyes held shadows, a flicker of something unspoken. August baked the town gold, but tension simmered. Jacob's business boomed, word of mouth spreading like wildfire. But he grew distant, canceling date nights for deadlines. Therapy continued, but he'd clam up post-session, retreating to the garage with tools as therapy of their own. "Just tired," he'd say, but exhaustion lined his face, the war's ghost whispering louder. One night, after a row over my obsession with finalizing the move, boxes still half unpacked, he snapped, voice rising. "What if it's too much? Me, the house, all this." Hurt flared. You asked me here. Thunder outside mirrored the storm, rain sheeting windows. He paced, confession spilling. Dreams morphing, now me dying in his arms, blood from Derek's imagined hand. I can't lose you, but what if I'm the one who breaks us? Vulnerability cracked him open, and I crossed the room, holding him as sobs racked, raw, marine-tough Jacob unraveling. We rebuild, I whispered, echoing his words from the storm. Brick by brick. Dawn brought armistice, canceled jobs, a day in bed with movies and mending. But the betrayal brewed, not from me, but within. His silence on a secret that would test us deepest. September sighed into Elmwood with equinox winds, leaves pirouetting like farewells, and our life settled into deeper grooves. Me fully moved in. Sketches pinned to fridge alongside his blueprints. Mornings where we'd brew coffee in tandem. His kiss lingering like cream in dark roast. The house breathed easier, walls echoing less with echoes, more with us. Laughter over burnt toast, quiet reads by the hearth. His hand finding mine in the dark like homing. This is it, he'd murmur some nights, fingers laced. The after the storm. I believed him. The hurt I'd hidden now a shared scar, faded but felt. But autumn's rot revealed decay. Jacob's business hit a snag. A client disputing payment over shoddy work. Whispers in town of hail cutting corners. Lies, born of a jealous competitor. But they stung, eroding his confidence like acid rain. He'd come home drained, poring over ledgers till eyes burned. Can't let it fail, he'd say, waving off my offers to help. Therapy unearthed more. Suppressed anger at the VA for botched claims. Resentment toward a system that hailed heroes then hung them out to dry. Feel like I'm fighting ghosts again, he confessed one evening, head in my lap on the couch, my fingers combing his hair. I listened, heart aching, but my own battles loomed. The gallery show review dropped, lauding my raw emotion, but critiquing narrative inconsistency. Sales slowed, freelance drying up, and doubt crept. Was I chasing shadows or substance? We leaned on each other, walks turning therapeutic, pounding pavement under harvest moons, venting until breaths synced. We're tougher than this, I'd say, squeezing his hand, and he'd pull me close, kiss his fierce affirmations. October's chill brought the axe. A letter arrived, official seal glaring. Jacob's ex, Sarah, filing for back alimony, claiming his new venture hid assets. It was bullshit, her lawyer sniffing blood from the town gossip, but the timing gutted him, reopening divorce wounds. She knows me, he raged that night, crumpling the paper by the fire. Knows how to twist the knife. I held him through the fury, but betrayal bloomed. Not hers, but the system's indifference, mirroring his war disillusion. What if I'm cursed? He whispered, voice breaking. Drag everyone down. No, I countered, fierce. You're the man who fixed my door, my life. We lawyered up, counter swift, but stress etched him. Sleepless nights, bourbon bottles emptying faster. Derek faded to footnote, his rehab progress a distant postcard. But Jacob's unraveling pulled at old threads. One night, post-argument with the attorney, he vanished to the garage, emerging with a duffel. Need space, he said, eyes haunted. Just a drive. Clear my head. Panic clawed, abandonment's echo. Don't, I begged, grabbing his arm. Fight here. With me. Tears streaked us both, his resolve cracking. I love you, Ryan. But I can't breathe. He left anyway. Truck rumbling into the dark, and I paced till dawn, phone silent. Hours stretched to a day, then 2 texts unanswered, calls to voicemail. Ellie arrived, hugging me tight. He's at the cabin. Give him time. But time felt like betrayal, his absence a void swallowing hope. On day 3 he returned, disheveled, eyes red-rimmed, duffel thudding to the floor. I'm sorry, he choked, collapsing into my arms. Scared shitless. Of failing you, like I failed them. The floodgates opened. Confessions of a call from Sarah, not just money, but loneliness. Her admitting she'd heard of us, the town queer couple. And it stirred regrets. She said I deserved better than hiding, he admitted, voice raw. Made me question. If I'm enough for this, for you. Betrayal's blade twisted. Not in her words, but his silence. The flight over fight. You ran, I said, hurt spilling. Left me to wonder if I'd hidden hurt just to find more. He nodded, owning it, and we unraveled the knot. Therapy doubled, couple sessions where a soft-spoken doc guided us through minds. Trust rebuilds slow, she said, and we nodded, hands clasped under the tissue box. November healed in increments, legal when clearing Jacob's name, business rebounding with apologies and referrals. My art steadied, a local exhibit selling out, whispers of Elmwood's own. We celebrated Thanksgiving small. Just us, turkey and truths toasting resilience. Winter blanketed the town anew, but inside, warmth held. Snowmen in the yard, his arms my coat. Climax crested Christmas Eve, storm winds howling like harbingers. Power flickered as we decorated, lights twinkling defiant. Then, knock at the door, sharp in the gale. Jacob answered, me behind, and there stood Derek. Coat dusted white, eyes clear but shadowed. Not here to cause trouble, he said, hands raised. Heard about the lawsuits, the nightmares. Rehab group, we share stories. Yours hit home. Jacob tensed, but Derek's gaze was on me. I betrayed you worst, Ree, but seeing you thrive, it's my closure. Awkward tea followed, words weaving fragile peace. No romance, just humanity acknowledged. Derek left with a nod to Jacob. Take care of him. And as the door shut, storm raging, Jacob turned, face alight. You did that. Gave grace. We made love by candlelight, bodies and souls sinking. Climax not destruction but union. Deep, shuddering release into trust. Spring 2026 bloomed verdant. Our one-year storm adversary marked with a porch rebuild. His hands, my designs, love in every nail. Hurt once hidden, now story shared. At readings where I'd speak of doors jammed and opened. Jacob's business thrived. Therapy a ritual, nightmares tamed to dreams. No tidy bows. Life scars ache on rainy days. But in Elmwood's embrace, we chose each other daily. Human, flawed, whole. The door stands firm now, but we leave it ajar. For storms pass, and light follows. In the end, it's not the hurt that defines us, but the hands that reach through it. Jacob's, forever mine.